4月12日下午，洛杉矶市警察局与洛杉矶县警察局举行联合新闻发布会，对洛杉矶市及洛杉矶县地区可能因为弗洛伊德案件而引发的暴乱做出零容忍的警告。洛杉矶市警察局局长摩尔和洛杉矶县警察局局长维拉纽瓦强调，警方等执法机构支持合法的言论自由及表达，支持合法且和平的抗议示威活动，但对违法犯罪的行为不会容忍和姑息。FBI 洛杉矶分局助理局长克里斯蒂约翰逊以及超过20位宗教领袖和社区领袖出席当天的新闻发布会并表示支持。洛杉矶市警察局局长摩尔首先回顾了弗洛伊德的案件经过，并再次指出明尼阿波利斯警察局前警官嫌疑人德雷克·肖万使用膝盖压制乔治·弗洛伊德的脖子超过9分钟，而旁观路人录制的视频经过社交媒体的疯传，引发了全美范围乃至世界范围的示威、抗议及游行活动，合理合法的要求为弗洛伊德伸张正义，但期间也出现了打砸抢烧等暴力和违法犯罪行为。局长摩尔同时也指出，陪审团听证会接近尾声，距离陪审团不日后将得出结论之际，最近又发生2起事件和相关视频，可能会给人们积蓄的愤慨和情绪上再一次火上浇油。局长摩尔强调，作为终生为警务服务的专业警官，作为父亲、丈夫、兄弟、儿子，当看到弗洛伊德被捕时的视频时，深感心情沉重，不忍直视。因此2020年在相关视频出现后，他就强烈谴责前警官德雷克·肖万的行为。肖万对另一个人的行为如此冷酷和缺乏人性，如此表露无遗且令人痛苦。全美众多警务高官也加入了谴责的行列。局长摩尔表示，对于最近和过去遭受过警察过度执法的人们，弗洛伊德案件和其庭审的公开无疑会增加更多的冲击和刺激，并可能对誓言保护社区和民众的警务人员产生更多不理解和不信任。因此，我们必须去理解人们和社区心中的愤慨和诉求。所以，洛杉矶市警察局的高阶警官和领导团体也集结在此，所有人将竭尽所能支持和鼓励社区和民众合理合法的诉求。但作为洛杉矶这个整体，也不能允许有人利用这些情绪来引发暴力，或绑架和劫持这些社区和民众的诉求意愿，去造成破坏和伤害。洛杉矶县警察局局长维拉纽瓦指出，作为警务人员，被赋予重大的执法责任和权利的同时，也肩负着被监督和问责的义务。维拉纽瓦强调，虽然弗洛伊德案件中几名前警官的行为不能代表所有的警务人员，但也不能对问题视而不见。警务人员也需要遵守法律法规，拒绝崇尚暴力。维拉纽瓦说，2020年弗洛伊德案件引发的社会动荡，也让警局学到了许多，领悟了许多。在2021年，将保持警务执法的高标准，尊重和保护所有人，以及和平的集会、抗议、示威的合法权利。维拉纽瓦并且表示，此次与局长摩尔和宗教领袖、社区领袖等举行会议，希望借助他们的力量，让更多社区和民众增加对警务人员和工作的了解和理解，希望消除误解与隔阂，重新建立信任。洛杉矶县警察局也将为洛杉矶县内以及周边所有警务和执法机构提供最大限度的支援和支持，以应对可能发生的暴力和骚乱活动，并努力确保2020年发生的社会动荡不会再重演。
First, I want to thank each individual behind me who's joined with me today. Each of them represent critical members of our community. They're faith leaders, they're community activists, they're law enforcement leaders. They are LA. They make up a region of 10 million people in a county of Los Angeles. I want to thank them for being here because their voice and their participation has never been more important. And it's an honor to stand here today with them. Last year on May 25th, George Floyd was stopped and placed under arrest by members of the Minneapolis Police Department. He had allegedly passed a counterfeit $20 bill at a retail store. As a result of that arrest, Mr. Floyd tragically died in police custody. Mr. Floyd's arrest was reported by bystanders as former MPD officer Derek Chauvin kneeled on Mr. Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes. The video of Mr. Floyd's arrest went viral. It was viewed across the nation and the world. As a result, communities of people reacted in protest across our country and internationally during events that in some instances ruptured into violent acts, devastation, and destruction of property. Communities were upset. Public emotions ran high and were raw, with most people asking how Mr. Floyd's death at the hands of arresting officers might have been prevented, and rightfully demanding justice. After 10 months of an investigation, which included the arrest of former MPD Officer Derek Chauvin, the trial began on March 30th. As the trial approaches its conclusion and the jury reaches its decision in the coming days, we gather here today. Now, as I prepared my remarks this morning, we began hearing about a tragic officer-involved shooting involving the death of an unarmed young black man in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. And also saw body-worn video of a police stop involving excessive force of an Army officer in Virginia. These images only compound the anger and frustration. As Chief of Police, as an individual who has dedicated his life to law enforcement, as a father, a husband, a brother, a son, the images of George Floyd's arrest were painful and difficult to watch. I harshly criticized the actions of Derek Chauvin last year when the video of Mr. Floyd's arrest became known. His callousness and lack of humanity to another human being was painful and apparent. I was joined in my criticism by members of law enforcement from across our nation, both senior executives as well as rank and file membership. To those in our community who have experienced police abuse, whether recently or over the decades of our city's past, George Floyd's death and the televised trial of Derek Chauvin has undoubtedly caused further trauma, causing harm to your sense of safety and justice that frays the level of trust between those of us in law enforcement and the communities we're sworn to protect and serve. It is critical that we not only acknowledge the pain within our community stemming from these events, but also to acknowledge the feelings of anger, frustration, and the legitimate need to express those emotions. As a department, as individuals committed to a life of service, I'm joined today by my entire senior staff of leadership team of the Los Angeles Police Department. All of us will do all within our power to support and facilitate these expressions within our community. As one community, our Los Angeles community, we must also strive to not allow legitimate anger and frustration to spiral into violence, or allow others to hijack these community emotions for their own destructive purposes. In closing, this past year has given all of us time to reflect on the injustices that remain in our society. And while I'm proud of how the Los Angeles Police Department has led in 21st century policing, I recognize we have farther to go to build trust and the support of the people we serve. As we move forward together, the Los Angeles Police Department will remain steadfast in its commitment to protect and to serve, including our solemn duty to protect the First Amendment rights of all individuals to protest peacefully. Thank you for joining us here today and being a part of this communication of our community leaders at such a critical time in Los Angeles history.
Behind me, all of our religious, community leaders, law enforcement leaders, everyone assembled here today. We're at a new era of policing and law enforcement, and the trial of Derek Chauvin is a step in the right direction in terms of accountability. But it also, we have to recognize accountability is a large word, and we all need to hold ourselves accountable, not just law enforcement. The community at large, everyone needs to be accountable to the rule of law, to reject violence in all its forms, be it unnecessary force, excessive force, be it just wanton violence, for example, against the Asian community that we've seen lately in the last few months. Anything that's violence needs to be rejected. We need to respect each other. And all law enforcement leaders across the nation are looking forward to the day that we hold everyone accountable. And this is a step in the right direction, the trial of Derek Chauvin. And we hope for a just result. It's based on the evidence, on the facts, and due process is honored. That is part of the system. And we acknowledge that, we work with that, we support that. But it's important to recognize, in spite of what people may say, what happened with George Floyd is not reflective of the entire profession of law enforcement in the nation. There are people trying to sell that false image, that false narrative, and it is not true. We have to reject it. We have to respect the rule of law. We have to reject violence. We have to convince our kids to keep those guns at home. That way no one gets hurt. And so these things become less and less frequent. Are they going to happen? Yes. Unfortunately, there's no such thing as perfect policing. There is going to be conflict. But how we step away from conflict, everyone can walk away safely. That is our motivation. That is our drive. 1992, I was there during the riots in 1992 as a young deputy. And Chief Moore, I know you were there as well. And quite a few people, but every day it seemed like less and less people were there in 92. We're getting older. But we learned a lot during that. Fast forward to 2020, we had civil unrest because of the George Floyd incident. We learned a lot more. We're now in 2021, pandemic's still here. We're still learning more. We're continuing to apply these standards to make sure we honor, we protect everyone's right to assemble peacefully and to protest and seek redress with government. And we are going to honor and support everyone who wants to protest peacefully. We'll clear traffic, make sure they're not harmed in any way, and that is my commitment as Sheriff of Los Angeles County. We will do that. If you show up at one of these events, it's no longer an event, it's 10 o'clock at night, you're dressed like tackle football with a helmet, goggles, and shields, you're not there to protest peacefully. Let's knock that off, right? Let's focus on the facts at hand, and we want to respect the decision, whatever it may be, and we want to work and communicate amongst each other and with our communities of faith to understand what happened and how we can make things better in the future. But I think we're on the right path, and we're going to continue down that path. The Sheriff's Department, as a mutual aid coordinator for Los Angeles and Orange County, I'm here to support all of our law enforcement agencies in the region, and any issues, any events of civil unrest that devolves into rioting, looting, arson, for example, we will be there to stop it. I promise you that. We're going to support every single police department in the region and make sure nothing happens like we saw in 2020, much less what we saw in 1992. That will not be accepted. It will not be tolerated. But we're here to support this peaceful protest. Anything that the community wants to do and gather together, we will do that. We had 20,000 people here in June of last year in front of the Hall of Justice. Peaceful. We want to see a return of that if we need to. We may have a result that everyone will say, hey, the criminal justice system works. We hold people accountable. And that's the rule of the day, and we always want to ensure that in everything we do. We'll continue to be doing that. And that being said, we're prepared. We have all of our personnel. They will be in uniform, no longer in civilian attire. Just in case, we'll have multiple field forces on standby, our sheriff's response teams, ready to respond anywhere. We'll be monitoring intelligence, doing all the things that we do to keep the community safe. We'll be doing that. And we'll be working hand in hand with our leadership, with the LAPD, with all the other municipal police departments, and Chief Miranda. The LA County Chiefs of Police Association. He represents all the municipal police agencies. We definitely have a very strong partnership, and also with our federal partners as well. We'll keep our ear on the ground, and we'll make sure everyone remains safe throughout this. Thank you.
Waiver. I'm here today standing amongst a rather diverse and distinguished aggregation of law enforcement officers from the Los Angeles Police Department and from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, two of the 6 largest law enforcement agencies across the country. And while I stand here today, I come at the invitation of Police Chief Michel Moore, a man whom I love and a man whose actions and whose responsibilities and his execution of responsibility I respect. But while I stand here today with some of the persons who are here from the various community organizations on civil rights and human rights issues, I'm consciously aware of the reason for which we assembled. And that is because we anticipate that a verdict will come in the case of Mr. Chauvin in Minneapolis, Minnesota very soon. And while we're here, we stand consciously aware that even before that case is determined, a similar incident has already taken place in the same town. And we're alerted and made aware of matters and activities and similar circumstances time and time and time and time again. And while we understand there is a need for clear minds, clear consciousness, and civic righteous behavior, and we're really calling for that across the board. We're hoping that persons will find means that are well within what is right and well within what is called the law to express their opinions and their responses to whatever the verdict may be in the Chauvin case in Minneapolis, Minnesota. But we also have to understand that the First Amendment rights that persons engage in simply allows them to say and to vent and to expose to the world how they feel about matters. And if you look back, if you take a careful inventory of matters and facts and incidences over the recent years, you'll find that there is justified cause for concern to be raised. And while we stand here in Los Angeles and support what Police Chief Michel Moore does and what LA County Sheriff Villanueva does, and all the good work that these law enforcement agencies and officers provide here in Southern California, just one little incident from a rogue group of officers on the other side of the country can undo psychologically and emotionally all of what has been done by great work of leading people and helping them to understand that there is a brighter day, there is a better day, there's a bigger day left a coming. But while we're here today, we know that justice will come when justice is demanded, because justice does not come until power is made available for those who are impoverished. And so we have to stand understanding that we're asking for justice, we're asking for constraint and restraint in behavior and expression in the aftermath of the absence of things that are unjust. But in the middle of all of that, we are a people, and we want to encourage everybody to do whatever it is you can to make sure that matters remain peaceful. But more than that, to do everything you possibly can to encourage and to support and to reinforce the efforts of Police Chief Michel Moore, a good man. If he had the power that would be at his disposal to reflect what he feels morally and ethically and what he feels to be the best interest of the people of Los Angeles, I believe you would see a difference. But because of circumstances being as they are, there are constraints and restraints that are placed on him and what he can do. But I believe that if we come together and realize what must be done, what needs to be done, to preserve the dignity and the integrity and the rightness of and fairness of this land and this state and this city and this county, we'll do everything we possibly can to do that. So we're calling for calm. We're calling for people to express their indignation or their support in whatever ways they want to do it, but well within the law. But at the same time, we're still encouraging people to fight until justice runs down like water, until righteousness flows like a mighty stream.
It's an honor to be with you here today, and I want to thank Chief Michel Moore for the invitation and for your strong, bold leadership. You know, until we get to that space, that time when we get a decision from the court system back east, I want us all to think about that we're on a journey for truth, for conversation, for healing, and for change. We're on this journey together. I am Latino. I'm a gay man. I know so well the struggles that my community has gone through. As a gay man, as a Latino, I have been part of protests and marches for equal rights and equal justice. Over the years, I have seen society change through protests, whether it was quiet or in the streets. I have seen the protests in government, in the streets of the city and the nation, and at the ballot box. I also have learned from great people who changed the world free of violence and discrimination and bigotry. I remember the leaders of MLK, Gandhi, Cesar Chavez, and one of my great leaders, Mother Teresa. We can change our community. We can speak up with respect, but we ask no violence. This is our city. We don't want destruction of buildings, of windows. More important of all, we don't want destruction of the human soul, the soul of our people, of our city. We can change our community if we commit ourselves to peaceful dialogue, activism, and respect for our human spirit. We deserve to have conversations. We deserve to fight for the injustices of our society with a strong, dignified voice. And we deserve to have justice. We must protect our streets and our communities because those streets and communities belong to the working people. They belong to the people who are homeless, to the people who are looking for a place to live and to work. We must protect our safe spaces for conversation, for learning and teaching. We can use this space for learning to love our neighbors as ourselves. So tonight I ask all of you to talk to your loved ones and your family members. That the coming days are going to be very critical. They're going to be very emotional. But together, as a community, we could move forward to change and healing. And in the end, we have to remember that we're all God's children, searching for a place in this world where we can be who we are, who we're supposed to be. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kristi Johnson. I'm the Assistant Director in charge of the FBI's Los Angeles Field Office. The FBI always has and always will be here to support our local law enforcement partners. We work daily with the Los Angeles Police Department and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office on matters such as counterterrorism, gang activity, fugitive apprehensions, as well as many other crimes. In some cases, we surge resources like we did last summer when there was specific violence happening in the city. Together, we have thwarted numerous attacks, shared critical intelligence, and over the past 2 decades have apprehended thousands of fugitives. Our shared goal is to make Angelenos safe. Now, among many other responsibilities of the FBI, we are laser focused on protecting civil rights, which includes constitutionally protected right to assemble, to peacefully protest, and to practice free speech. It is when these rights, as mentioned by Chief Moore, are hijacked by those who engage in criminal activity behavior that we respond. We focus on the violence and property destruction so that those exercising free speech can do so uninterrupted. Arson, assaults, property damage, and other violent crimes are not protected speech. We also work with our law enforcement partners in LA on the LA Hate Crimes Task Force, where we investigate allegations of crimes motivated by racial bias and other forms of hate. We encourage anyone who believes that their civil rights have been violated to report them so that we can determine whether or not an actual crime has been committed. Reporting will help us safeguard the rights of every individual. The FBI does not pursue individuals who are peacefully exercising their First Amendment protected rights. However, those who choose to disrupt the rights of others by committing acts of violence will be held accountable. Business owners and residents are too often the victims of crimes. We urge all residents and visitors to abide by the law and respect their neighbors like the vast majority of Angelenos do. We do need your help. Please report any suspected activity to the FBI at our home office here in LA at 310-477-6565 or submit a tip at tips.fbi.gov. Thank you.
Sages taught במקום שאין איש Ishtadel liyot ish. Referring to leadership, our sages admonished us. You look around and see no one else filling the leadership gap, the void, try is the verb. Try to fill that void. And in that context, that's why I view my relationship, and the Jewish community feels its very close relationship to the chief, the LAPD, the Sheriff's Department. The operative term is trying. We're not angels, we don't always succeed. But leadership is about stepping forward, and you see today the amazing cross-section of what makes the fabric of Los Angeles so powerful. The Jewish DNA, in fact, for all of us who look at the Bible to inform our moral DNA, goes back to the book of Exodus, where it says, talking about social justice, Tzedek, Tzedek Tirdov. Twice, justice, justice you shall pursue. But what we learn and understand that laws alone cannot create a good society. To that formula, you also need tzedakah, which comes from the same root as justice, the distributive justice beyond the courtroom, and not just charity. We must be there for each other, and over the course of the last 44 years, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, we've been honored to be part of that struggle. And you have our commitment that the Jewish community will be a part, not just of the struggle, but of the ongoing quest for solutions and answers. 2 more points. We all heard after Seattle, after Portland, after New York, after La Brea, after Santa Monica, that burning down of our neighborhood stores, the excuse, sometimes proudly, offhandedly said, it's only a building. That's a lie. When you destroy that business, you destroy a family's dream, you destroy neighborhood jobs, you destroy hope itself. So we'll join in the freedom and defend, to protest, to demand justice, to give tzedakah, yes, but we say loudly and definitively, no to rioting, no to violence. Our hearts are broken today by learning of more innocent victims who were impacted by police officers. There are really no words for us to say other than to express our solidarity with the victims. But I also want to share with you an incident that didn't make it into the media yesterday. It involved Officer Rowe and Officer Ramirez, who I met in front of our campus, the Simon Wiesenthal Center at Yeshiva University of Los Angeles, because our campus was desecrated by a swastika and other graffiti. A relatively quote-unquote small hate crime. But you know, Officer Rowe and Officer Ramirez were there within minutes. They stayed long enough to try to absorb and understand what had gone on. They've been trained to understand what a hate crime is and how it impacts beyond the $50 or $100 and $200 of damage, how it goes to the very heart of our community. And so this is not a blind blank check to any PD or any sheriff's department, but it is an opportunity to acknowledge that they do the kind of work that makes the difference between a livable society, a society that brings together a magnificent cross-section of cultures and religions and ethnicities. They're the ones on the front line, and through the efforts and leadership of a man who stepped forward, our chief, he deserves it.
Good afternoon. My name is Capri Maddox, and I am the General Manager of the Civil, Human Rights, and Equity Department. Today I stand before you as more than just a civic leader. I am a black woman. I have an African American husband. I have an African American son. And I live in the United States of America. I want to be very clear that for all the mothers and sisters in America, I know that feeling when your loved one leaves the house and you think to yourself, does my husband have the latest insurance card in his vehicle? Because I want to minimize the opportunities for anything to go wrong in the event there is a traffic stop. I understand that my life as a woman in America, as well as my role as the mother of an African American teenager, go hand in hand. I make sure that his parents' name and phone number and address are on all of his materials, so that in the event that he does have an interaction with someone, they know that they can call us. And it's still not enough to stop that pit in your stomach to wonder if something goes wrong, could you get a phone call that could change your life for life? Like what happened to Dante's mother just a couple days ago. When you think about what has been happening, and I'm talking about Dante Wright, that just lost his life, the 20-year-old man. And of course, the incident that happened with Mr. George Floyd that we are very concerned about at this time. We are very grateful that the Chief of Police, Michael Moore, has invited us to come as leaders to serve and to share in this space. But I come here today with a heavy heart. And I also come with hope for our city during this time, because our society is still striving to live up to our values of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness for all, emphasis on for all. We are still yearning for a place where everyone belongs and where everyone's dream is safe and where everyone can pursue their life's dreams. We know that while the Chauvin trial is yet underway, another unarmed black man, just 20 years old, was fatally shot in a Minneapolis suburb. I think it's important to honor George Floyd as a community. I think it's important for us to definitely honor Dante as he recently lost his life. But I think it is very essential that we do it in the right way. This is a hard time. This is a time of trauma. I've even experienced it as we watch over and over again George Floyd losing his life and slipping away. But I'll tell you this, another thing that I saw is when I started with the city in 1992 as a young student worker, I know what it looks like when our city burns to the ground. It took us 2 years. And we still work. I worked on that assignment personally for 2 years with the housing department, and things still aren't where they should or could be as a result of what happened in 1992. And I don't want to see another person lose their life, but I'll tell you this much, I don't want to see our city fall apart again, because that's not who we are. Do we need time to turn this movement into justice? This is a moment. And this has been a moment that we are moving forward for justice and equity in the city of Los Angeles. It's not a moment of destruction. African Americans, my Latino brothers and sisters, my API community, and Native Americans, we are still fighting for the equity in the city. We know that this should be something that we shouldn't have to ask for. Shouldn't be anything we have to demand. But it is what it is, and we have to continue to make this fight. And here in Los Angeles, the Civil Human Rights and Equity Department is being stood up to answer the call, particularly as it relates to things that are happening in the private sector. But we could not be silent as it relates to issues that are impacting our city as it relates to community policing and other efforts. We are a city that should be upholding humanity and dignity for all of our residents. And that is why I still have hope today, because even in the face of the trauma that I am feeling as an African American woman, we have the tools to grieve and keep everyone safe in the process. So today, I have hope that we have the opportunity to share our concerns with our elected and appointed leaders. And for those that are concerned, or maybe we shouldn't say anything, or maybe we shouldn't participate in the process, I'll tell you what my grandmother told me. If you're not at the table, you are on the menu. And so I want us to be sure to engage and to work as it relates to our neighbors and honoring those that have lost their lives with peace, dignity, and making a difference and a change. This does not begin, and this situation doesn't begin and end with one trial. It begins with all of us committing to the long road ahead as it relates to peace, justice, and equity, to holding hope. So we know that trials can happen, and we saw this in 1992. Decisions are made, and we don't know what the outcome of the cases will be, but I'll tell you this much. I know that we can be frustrated, we can be upset, but we have to be change agents. We have to be vocal, and we have to move forward, and we have to heal our city. And destruction is not the answer. I appreciate those that are here to make a difference, all of the partners that are here with us, and I know that together we are better than destruction in our city, and I know that we are the community that is going to heal our land. Thank you.